All right, I just put it on. Can you hear me? Okay, cool.
Yes.
Yeah, just wanted to make sure you could hear me. Let's switch scenes and see if it works.
Oh, you mean on the live stream?
Okay, yeah. You're a little bit on the live stream, is that?
No.
Okay,
Ooh,
that's fine. I'll get Prem.
More seating, off-stream seating everywhere.
Yeah, Prem is, he likes being on camera. So, yeah, welcome everyone to Understanding Bitcoin Source 12, Privacy and Coinjoins. It's going to be about privacy and Coinjoins. I don't go, whoa, what happened? Okay, just want to make sure this thing was still open. If you want, you could be.
You kind of stopped doing that over the last few.
Yeah, some people in here have some pseudonyms, like Floppy Twizzler. You like that? Yeah.
Aren't they all floppy?
Anyway, first, slide, I will show a list. So can anyone tell me what all of these things have in common? Anyone?
There are all types of Coinjoins, different versions. No.
Are they all Coinjoins, or are they like mix? Or are they a combination of like mixing and Coinjoins?
They're mixers.
What's the
Coin-
difference between a mixer and a Coinjoin?
It's a very thin, line kind of. I don't even know if it should be considered as a difference. Yeah, it's gone. But yes, it's correct. They're not just mixer/coin joins though. They have another property to them. Any of these catch your eye? Do you know anything about any of these mixers?
Yeah, I mean, I know Whirlpool was Samurai's mixer.
Okay, and what happened with Samurai?
Well, they've been arrested and their servers have been confiscated, and they're no longer coordinating Coinjoins, as far as I know.
How about Bitcoin Fog?
I don't know.
Yeah, he was
No?
also arrested.
Yeah. So maybe the correlation between all of these is that they're all seized Bitcoin mixers.
Oh.
So you have the alleged amounts listed here, alleged. So Helix 2021 is when it stopped operating. They estimate 300 million plus from criminal activity. Bitcoin Fog, they're estimating, again, alleged 400 million plus. Chip Mixer, 3 billion plus.
Wow.
Sinbad.
I've never even heard of that.
Yeah, they were a pretty solid mixer, it seems. Sinbad 2023 closed down. There was a Chainalysis article, I think it was, that said 33% of all the activity was from criminal activity, which is a pretty big, bold claim. And at least 24.2 million of their funds are from illicit activity. Again, alleged. And then, of course, we have Whirlpool, which is kind of small beans in comparison to a lot of these.
It's 200 million, though. It's not 100 million.
I saw 100 million from criminal activity on the seizure report. I don't know anything about 200 million.
No, it was like over 4 billion in total activity, and then it was 200.
No, this is criminal activity specifically.
And then 200 plus million in.
Yeah, I saw 100 million. I can't confirm 200. That's alleged from Prem now. So, to elaborate on privacy, I want to say that there are some products that have been exposed to risk accepting certain funds. But as an education process, I want to go over how Coinjoins or mixers work. So that's mainly what I'll be focusing on today. But before I go into coin joining, I wanted to go over the basics of receiving Bitcoin for anyone who may not know how this works. Because if you don't understand the basics, then you won't understand how the coin join works or the mixing. Most of you already know this, but it's good to rehash. So to receive Bitcoin, you need a program called a wallet that generates an ID called an address. It has more meaning to it than just being an ID, but I simplified it. That only your wallet can spend from. Again, ownership of funds on the Bitcoin blockchain doesn't necessarily mean that it's the person who was the intended recipient of those funds. But this is a simplified model, so I can explain what Coinjoins are. So to receive Bitcoin, the sender then uses your generated address to tell their wallet where to send the Bitcoin to. Every time Bitcoin is sent to an address, the details of the transaction are saved to a shared database we know as the Bitcoin blockchain. Transactions on the blockchain can be viewed by anyone, very public. To get your balance, wallets can look through the blockchain to sum all the Bitcoin you've received at a particular address. Okay, we already know this. So why might someone not want everything sent to one address? This is a basic privacy conundrum in Bitcoin, using different addresses. Why might you want different addresses to be used, and why might you not want everything sent to one address?
Among other reasons, if all of your transactions are sent to one address, anyone who knows that address will know exactly how much Bitcoin you have.
Right, that's a pretty bad thing. Anyone have any other things they could?
If it gets compromised, it's like one, not all of them, or?
Yeah, if someone steals your keys, then someone can move all your funds at once, and that is a huge security risk. I think that's all the reasons I had here as a basic thing. But I also have a section on tackling address reuse. When someone uses the same address whenever they receive Bitcoin, we call this address reuse. People generally don't want any rando who owes them money to be able to see their Bitcoin balance by looking up their address, which is kind of what Prem said. And from the beginning, Bitcoin wallets were made to generate a new address for every payment they receive. Although they can't stop you from giving out the same address multiple times, and you should always be able to spend from an address that you generated, that you own the private keys to. This way, a new sender can't tell how much money the recipient has. You don't want senders seeing how much money you already have, because there's a huge privacy leak. Imagine if someone doesn't want to pay you because they see that you're rich, which is a ridiculous problem. And again, going over basics about balance. The blockchain doesn't keep track of your balance, it keeps track of each payment made to an address. Your wallet keeps track of your balance by adding these payments up into a single value. That's what we call your balance. The phrase UTXO, pronounces letters, stands for unspent transaction output, and is the payments previously sent to you, and that can now be spent by you. UTXO, the ACN transaction, AC kind of makes an X sound. That's where it comes from. Think of a UTXO like a chunk of gold and an address as a lockbox to which you hold the key to. To see your balance, go through all your lockboxes and sum the weight of the gold in them. That's an analogy that I try and use to make understanding these transactions easier. Sending Bitcoin, using the gold and lockbox analogy, when you send in gold, you need to open the lockbox and remove the entire piece of gold to spend. If the piece is too big for you to want to spend, you do the equivalent of chipping off the piece you want to send and keep the rest for yourself as change, the semantics we use. The change is usually sent to a new lockbox/address so that someone watching the account of this happen on the ledger doesn't know which lockbox was the payment and which lockbox was the change. So there is some ambiguity on which one it goes back to you, I guess. Was the big payment going back to you, or was the small payment going back to you? And you can make heuristics that I'll go into later, even that word. So I wanted to go over Greg Maxwell disrupting something called taint analysis. Does anyone know what?
Very nerdy.
Yeah. Does anyone know what taint analysis might mean in this context?
I'm going to assume that it has to do with if you maybe like a particular Bitcoin transaction, maybe if you knew something more about it, like if you knew the identity of someone who was involved with it or something like that, then in a sense those Bitcoin are tainted from the perspective of privacy.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say that's a pretty good guess. Yeah, I think I have it. Yeah, analysis of the flow of information. So getting information about a transaction from the history of the blockchain, let's say. So in the 2013 paper, Anonymity of Bitcoin Transactions, it refers to the service of taint analysis as a process that calculates the correlation between two addresses. So between transactions, if I can calculate some correlation between them or find some weakness in privacy and identify, let's say, a certain output as being part of another transaction's input in terms of ownership. The paper also says an alternate meaning is the percentage of Bitcoins that come from a known theft of Bitcoins and have been blacklisted by popular exchange markets. We've heard tainted Bitcoin before. No one wants any tainted Bitcoin because sometimes they're rejected from exchanges. And exchanges sometimes won't even send it out to mixing services if they could have any recognition of these addresses. Maybe implying exchanges try to coin join their own coins just so they can participate in certain rounds. So here comes Coinjoin in 2013. It's a term that's associated with a certain Bitcoin talk post, but as a meme aside, I wanted to go over this whole Greg Maxwell invented it in 2013. Greg Maxwell was a very prolific Bitcoin developer. He's still involved in things in the Bitcoin space, and he came up with this Coinjoin Bitcoin talk post. And I just found all of this really funny. It's a meme that says Greg Maxwell invented blah blah in 2013. And you can see all these different people. He did actually make confidential transactions, which are used in Monero and Elements. Monero has a trusted setup, and Elements doesn't though. He talks about some roll-ups, covenant upgrades. Jeremy Rubin had a joke here. But just to give you some context on who this person is, what they proposed, and why it might seem so advanced. Because he thinks of a lot of different ideas, and he contributed a lot to Bitcoin. So, Coinjoin, Bitcoin privacy for the real world. Coinjoin was a term created by Greg Maxwell in his 2013 Bitcoin talk post, Coinjoin, Bitcoin privacy for the world. The term describes a class of schemes to mix coins, mentioning some potential pitfalls and proposed solutions. And within this Bitcoin talk post, I thought there was some very interesting quotes that he wrote in this post. One of them is, Bitcoin is often promoted as a tool for privacy, but the only privacy that exists in Bitcoin comes from pseudonymous addresses, which are fragile and easily compromised, something we know. Anyone who builds this is going to be accused of enabling criminal activity. It doesn't matter if any actual criminals use this or not. And the best point I feel like he made was, real criminals don't need Coinjoin. They can afford to buy privacy in a way that regular users cannot. I've been quoting this thing I heard from Max Kaiser, that Wachovia Bank, which was acquired, but when they were in business, I think laundered around $500 billion. So yeah, if you have money,
No, it's
why?
Deutsche Bank. That's where you go to launder money.
Huh? Deutsche Bank.
HSBC too, they're really big on that.
Lots of banks launder lots of money, and they get slaps on the wrists because their clients typically have lots of money as well. So anyone who's trying to move major money will typically go through a bank. There was a Stalker News post I saw recently about a bank that was doing business with people sanctioned in Iran, and they went back and did it again and again, even after being caught. And every single time just got a slap on the wrist because of the money they were able to generate with these laundering schemes, which makes you start to question, what is the government attacking when they look at privacy tools for the blockchain?
Now, Randy, I know before you go into this thing, I just wanted to mention from the previous slide that, you know, like a lot of these OG Bitcoiners, developers, etc., they knew that Bitcoin was pseudonymous. And I feel like a lot of people who are maybe somewhat newer to Bitcoin and like don't necessarily understand all the technicalities, like when they discover that, they suddenly think like it's some kind of a fault or a failure or a shortcoming of Bitcoin. It's like, no, like this is exactly how Bitcoin was designed.
Correct. Back in 2013, he had this great analysis, this premonition, if you will, about what might happen to people who work on privacy tools. So yeah, he understood what would happen, he understood the implications of things. And he didn't actually make any implementation when he made this post. In fact, he made a bounty for anyone who did make Coinjoin implementation. Exactly. And if you look at the post, you'll see him organizing this. So Coinjoin intuition. To build intuition on how the Coinjoin scheme works, let's revisit the gold analogy. Imagine you would like to move your gold to someone else's lockbox without people knowing the gold from your lockbox was going there. What you can do is talk to a middleman/coordinator who will take your lockbox along with some other people's and only move the gold from yours to the recipient when he does the same for everyone else. This way, he can record one transaction, recording everyone's lockboxes filled with gold as the inputs, and recording all the lockboxes he moved the gold to as outputs, aka the recipients. In this way, no one really can see who's paying who, except, the coordinator. And I was going to ask the question: what information does the coordinator have that all the other participants don't have? And that is, who's paying who? But on the public ledger that shows the transaction where this was made, no one can really ascertain who's paying who. One party knowing information that leaks your privacy isn't as bad as broadcasting it to the whole world, but it's not optimal. We'll go into that later. So, anyone see a privacy problem with my high-level description besides the coordinator knowing the link between inputs and outputs? What if Prem and I use this service and I have 10 grams of gold to give someone and Prem has 1 gram to give someone else? What leak would we see there?
It's easy to see what inputs might belong to what outputs based on.
Yeah, if we had any amounts,
Yeah.
even if it was one transaction.
Is it Bitcoin thing?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah, how can I find it?
We are streaming, so.
Yeah.
Can't see your joy.
Oh yeah, and I was gonna say that the solution would be equal amount outputs and that the coordinator has to force this. So not allow people to make arbitrary amounts that could dox everyone else. So the last requirement is that I only pay one person with my inputs. Why would it hurt privacy if I don't? In a similar way, if I had a coordinator and I gave them 10 Bitcoin and Prime gave them 1 Bitcoin and there was 1 Bitcoin outputs, all equal amounts, people could still tell that which people I paid with a good amount of certainty. So you kind of need to have one output or else people can see that I'm filling up all these orders. And maybe there's other schemes you could do to try and hide this, and we'll go into how other people have implemented Coinjoins, but there's a lot of considerations to make to not hurt privacy.
What you're talking about now is one of the problems. Maybe it was like those. I don't know that they were the hackers, but they were these 2 people who were trying to launder a bunch of Bitcoin, and then they were just they represented just such a large percentage of the mixing that was going on
Right.
that it was easy for the government to pinpoint them.
Yeah.
Yeah, another part is liquidity, right? Like how much liquidity exists. And it's like you're taking up most of the other side. You can kind of.
Yeah, you could see with a good probability which outputs belong to the inputs that went into this Coinjoin transaction. So liquidity concerns are vital. So the Coinjoin mechanics, I have the Coinjoin mechanics for a centralized server. So this has the privacy leak of the coordinator knowing who's paying who, which we will solve later, but let's go with this model for now. So a server collects UTXO information from interested participants. Everyone says, hey, this is the gold that I want you to make in one transaction. The server constructs a transaction with 2 outputs for each participant, one of a fixed value and one for the change, because people don't have to put in equal amounts in the input. You can have changes to this transaction. The transaction is sent to all participants. So once a transaction is constructed, it's sent to all the participants to OK. The transaction input belonging to the participant is signed, and the transaction is sent to the coordinator, back to the coordinator. The coordinator broadcasts the transaction once he aggregates all of the signatures from the people who submitted their transaction. And they're only signing the transaction template that the coordinator made. So the signature isn't good if the transaction as they saw it wasn't broadcast. And this is done through something called a signature hash. You use hash all to make sure you get all the inputs and all the outputs committed to within your signature. So this is the centralized server. And we mentioned the need for equal valued outputs, but there's also this concept, kind of like Prem was saying, where there could be big providers of liquidity who register multiple different inputs. And in this case, it leaks someone's privacy when trying to coin join. But in some cases, it's meant to leak others, or the privacy of others. And this is what we call a Sybil attack, when a lot of these inputs are owned by the same party. And they are using this scheme to try and reduce the anonymity set, or the amount of people that you could be. Because Coinjoins give you deniability, and you want to have as much deniability as possible. So the next question might be, how can we do this without a centralized server knowing who's paying who? And we can use something called a Chaumian-based solution. So this is how eCash is derived as well. It uses a similar scheme. And there was a Blockstream research article written by Chiara that I thought explained Chaumian signatures pretty well. But it's like, if you have yeah, how's it going? Yeah, if you have a piece of paper and you put another piece of paper on top of it that has a write through to it. You know how those, I don't know if they're like carbon paper or something, the paper that you write on and it seeps through to the paper below it.
Carbon paper,
Yeah. So if you have a piece of paper and you have a piece of carbon paper that obfuscates the paper underneath it, and you sign that paper, then you could actually give that paper and the carbon paper on top of it to somebody else and never learn what's at the bottom, right at the bottom page of that. So that is kind of how Chaumian systems work. You blind something, or such in a way such that the server can't see it. You know, encrypt it. I give it to you, and there's a way that you can sign my encrypted data, give it back to me. I can decrypt it and still have the signature that you gave me and have that maintained valid. So now I can go over the scheme after going over that simple concept, hopefully. A server collects UTXO information from interested participants and asks for blinded data to be signed. So let's say all of us in the room, we go give UTXO information to a server. And the information we give is information about our UTXO on chain and an encrypted piece of data that contains output addresses with amounts and all that other stuff. The server signs the blinded piece of data, and it gives it back to us, gives the user a signed blinded token, right? And the amount should be equal. I guess just the output address is blinded, but the amounts should be clear for the server to know that, hey, I authorized this. He did give me a UTXO that equaled this amount I want to put in the output. So the user unblinds the data once the server signs it, and while still having a verifiable server signature committing to it, and it sends the server from a new anonymous connection. So after I've gotten my output address signed with an amount, and again, the server signed an encrypted output address, I get that output address, I unblind it, and then I will make a new anonymous connection to this coordinator, and I'll resubmit this output address and value with a valid signature from the server. So yeah, it's this blinded token, blah, blah. I go and submit it, and then the server validates the signature of the unblinded data token is correct. So they say, hey, I did sign this in the past. The user did register the UTXO with the correct value to have this output in my next Coinjoin transaction. And then the server creates a transaction. Input and output order don't really matter all that much. And the user comes back, and they sign their input. Again, this would be on a different connection from the anonymous connection in which you gave him your output address. Now, the coordinator, or the person who's making this Coinjoin transaction, has no idea who's paying who, because they never learned the output address that was associated with each input UTXO, because the output address was blinded when they first registered the first UTXO. And finally, after all the users come back and they sign their respective input by asking for the transaction, doing the signature, giving it back, the transaction is broadcast. And this was also in the Coinjoin post made by Greg Maxwell. And if you guys know about the Coinjoin implementations I'll touch on later in the presentation, This is what we've moved to as an advancement. We didn't get this as early as 2013. People had to go back and look at Greg Maxwell's work and say, hey, I want to build this scheme that enforces a better form of privacy.
So was this implemented into any of the Coinjoins?
Yeah.
Do you know which ones?
Yeah, I'll go into
Okay.
it. Let's see. But before that, I wanted to talk about some brief problems that weren't addressed in the 2013 post. And I didn't exhaustively go over the Coinjoin post. There are other things about IP addresses and how that can be logged when you go to a coordinator, and how Tor can be used and all this other stuff. But these things I didn't see mentioned as much. So 3 things: toxic change, subscription pattern payments, and post-mix consolidation. And there's other things that I can think of that I've spoken to people about that I think is a way to identify other Coinjoin implementations. But these are the 3 that I'm going to go over, at least. So the first thing is toxic change. Does anyone know what toxic change is in a Coinjoin transaction? Yeah.
So when you do a CoinJoin, you normally have to take whatever your UTXOs are and normalize them to a specific size so that everybody else is throwing in pieces of value of the same size so that they can be mixed. But in order to get your piece of value to the correct size, you have to, you're probably not exactly the right size as is, so you have to split off something slightly bigger, and that little piece that's left over, if you're trying to, like, you know, go backwards and see what after a mix has happened, if you're trying to go backwards and see where that money came from, you'll see this. I mean, if you end up spending this little extra sliver later, anybody who goes and looks it up on chain can see that this is the extra piece from that got left over from value that did go into a mix. So it's sort of associated to the mix because it can't be hidden because it shares the same lineage essentially. So it's tainted by proximity essentially.
It's the Coinjoin. It's associated with this privacy transaction, right?
So change is usually the Bitcoin that you send back to yourself from a transaction that's not being sent to someone else. But since
Correct.
you're trying to do a coin join, the fact that you're sending some Bitcoin back to yourself immediately exposes, oh, this transaction, which was a coin join, came from, you know, like it's another.
Well, at least the change.
Yeah.
The change comes back to you. There's not really a way to prove that you didn't enter a coin join, since I could take my funds from an exchange, put it into a coin join, and that's very obvious. But there's a lot of different problems with the change that might come out of a coin join that comes back to me if it's put within my possession. A lot of bad things I can do, a lot of bad wallet implementations can do, and that's why we call it toxic change.
For example, if you go and buy a beer with a piece of value that was split off and the rest of it went into a coin join, then if the e-commerce person that took your order has any additional information about you, then you're doxing yourself, essentially.
Yeah.
You gotta be careful.
Yeah, now the new person knows that you're associated with this coin join when you pay somebody else. And yeah, again, it's not the worst thing. There's worse things that could happen with this toxic change right here. Huh? Or did you want to?
Well, I was gonna say, if like you spin that and then you also spin one of the outputs.
Exactly, yeah.
Well, that's going to come in the next
Yeah.
one.
Yeah, so toxic change is a change that comes out of the coin join for a participant. If you're using an implementation that uses change in the coin join, it's considered toxic because it can leak your privacy if your wallet allows you to use it with post-mix coins, for example, or if you care that someone can see that it came from a coin join transaction. It can correlate your input as well for that change, but that's with every transaction. So it reduces it back to a basic Bitcoin transaction, at least the change. So not only does it leak your privacy, it reduces the anonymity set for everyone, assuming that you use a toxic change UTXO with an post mix UTXO.
That
Who connects the whole mix to you? Like everybody gets, like, only to you though, right? Only to the person that spent it.
Well, but now I'm reducing the amount of, for all the other outputs, there's one less person who it
Yeah.
could have belonged to.
By doxing yourself, there's one less person to identify in the group of Coinjoins.
Yeah, if all of us were participating in a coin join, I can live in this world of deniability, where if someone buys heroin, it's like, was it me or was it anyone else in this room? Yeah.
Everyone refers to the group of people you were mixing coins with.
Right, but if I raise my hand and I say, hey, this output, I can show that it's mine. So the heroin buying wasn't done by me, now they have a smaller set. And if everyone keeps raising their hand, then we kind of lose this privacy quality that you get from Coinjoins. So subscription pattern payments. So a lot of the analysis done on Bitcoin, on the Bitcoin blockchain, is based on heuristics, which my definition of that is educated but imprecise guesses / assumptions. For example, the common input ownership heuristic that says every input of a transaction is owned by the same person can be a wrong assumption. So to anyone who knows ideas that break this heuristic, does anyone know a simple one that doesn't involve Coinjoins?
The input belongs to more than one person.
Yeah.
I mean, technically, lightning, right? Like a lightning close.
Right. Yeah. When you're making Lightning transactions, it's a multi-party protocol. Another thing is PayJoin. If anyone's ever heard of that, it's a protocol essentially that if I were to pay Prem, we can negotiate something where he includes an input in my payment to him. Again, obfuscating this heuristic that people try and use in chain analysis.
Is it possible that, like, let's say you and I wanted to buy something, could we create a transaction where we're both?
Yeah.
So that's like another example. Where
Yeah,
we're
that's-
both putting coins in to purchase something, and like they're not the same. We're not the same person.
Right, and in the Coinjoin post made by Greg Maxwell, there was a previous post before that he was playing around with this idea, and he put some inputs that he was asking people to include or propose in a bigger transaction with their own inputs, all the new commenters. And that's fine. That's a manual Coinjoin, of course. You lose a lot of privacy. There's no Chaumian eCash scheme involved, or Chaumian blinding scheme, not eCash.
I haven't heard this term subscription pattern.
Yeah, I just made it up. And yeah, I'll get into things like later about certain heuristics that I was talking to somebody about.
But
There's
is the idea there the whole like, well, you know, one or more inputs and two outputs? Is that the,
no, it's more about like human behavior and the patterns that you could extrapolate.
just the concept of?
Yeah, subscription pattern
If you subscribe to
payments.
something, right, like you're making the same payment.
Yeah.
Is one way to think about it.
And I'll go into it, a little bit at the end here. I was talking to a researcher from Spiral about my idea here, and they were telling me that this is a great way to identify people, because some people might not be thinking in this mindset. So, but one thing I did want to preface this with is that heuristics are used because they should be right more times than they are wrong, but that's not ensured, right?
One thing, there was this tool, I forgot the person who made it, a long while ago, where if you're looking to spend like some transactions, you can queue them up. You can pre-sign them; they're already signed and everything, and you queue them up in this program, and it connects to one of a node to submit it to over Tor, and it'll do it during like randomized times, so that there's no like timing analysis of this person is like, if you're sending a transaction at 3 a.m. sometimes, and sometimes at like, noon and stuff like that, you can't even tell where in the world they might be and things like that. So there's other heuristics like that
Yeah.
are broken with some tools, but people use them.
Right, timing attacks. I don't know if I have time to talk about it at the end, but it is also a big vulnerability right now in the peer-to-peer encryption spec for Bitcoin peers. But timing attacks, yeah, is definitely one thing. So one heuristic that may be reasonable to use is that if there's a set of addresses known to belong to one party, let's say there's a drug dealer. I'm using illicit things. I probably shouldn't because that's not the case I'm trying to make. But let's say I'm buying something from Steam, way back when they accepted Bitcoin, and I obviously want to maintain my privacy when I spend money to Steam, because maybe I don't want them to know how much Bitcoin their users have. Maybe they'll try some weird advertising on me. I don't know. So maybe my pattern is I'm always going to Coinjoin and then pay Steam for a game. And I always pay a single address or something like that, or maybe a set of their known addresses. And I always have this pattern with me. So this is a pattern that's, I guess, relative to me as an individual. And here I basically am trying to pin this down as a vulnerability or a vector, attack vector for breaking people's privacy, I guess is a better way to put it. So one heuristic that may be reasonable to use is that if there's a set of addresses known to belong to one party, and one of those addresses is paid as an output for every Coinjoin, one of the participants might be the same person. So again, -1 on anonymity set, which we want to make as big as possible. Again, for deniability, so that we can get some privacy. Post-mix consolidation. Anyone know, what this might be? It's similar to the last one.
Yeah, so I mean, you've mixed your coins, and you've got all these different UTXOs that are by themselves now seemingly private and anonymous. But if you make the silly choice of now combining some of those UTXOs to do a purchase, you have now associated those two UTXOs together, and if that transaction can be connected to you, you have now completely eliminated the privacy and the point of doing the CoinJoin.
Exactly. Well, they know all these post-mixed UTXOs belong to the same person. Again, -1 anonymity set.
Even worse if you mix those mixed UTXOs with like one of your pre-unmixed UTXOs.
Right,
And
yeah.
then you just totally...
Yeah, it matters, like, how many, specifically if they were in the same mix, and they're like, that kills it. But if you mix again and again and again, and they happen to be in very, very different mixes, then maybe consolidating isn't as bad, but it still reduces the overall and
I got a question.
Yeah.
Just on the theme here, so are there any tools available to people who have who have mixed coins and they want to know how private their mixed coins are over time? Something that can go and inspect all the inputs that went into the mix for UTXOs that they own, post-mix UTXOs that they own, and maybe send them notifications or something whenever the anonymity value of those mixed UTXOs gets decreased.
So I don't know of any tool that does this for UTXOs with respect to all Coinjoin implementations. The closest thing I can think of, closest thing I can think of is Wasabi. I know they have accounts in their wallet, and they will tell you something like some score of how private your UTXOs are.
I don't know though that it takes like other.
No, it doesn't.
I think
Yeah,
it
it's
takes
just the
your own-
Wasabi.
it's-
Yeah,
well, no, I'm
Coinjoins.
saying like even just like people in your mix, if they.
No.
I don't think it looks forward to see if they consolidated post mix.
It doesn't.
Just looks at yourself and gives a score, I guess, at the time of mix, what it was, and then if you combine it, it'll.
Well, there's like a static score on my account that I will see. It's it's like
just now
I feel like it's a percentage or something. I haven't.
What I'm saying is, like, look at your UTXO, like, trace backwards through the mix you did,
Right.
and look at all the inputs that went in there. Find the toxic change. Find the,
and see if they were combined. and
see
things like
who
Yeah.
else that was in your mix is screwing or is messing up their own privacy and how it affects your
that. That'd be a pretty cool tool.
private coin.
Yeah, it would be a cool tool for sure. I've also discussed with a researcher of making a tool like this for fun with respect to something akin to the subscription pattern that I was talking about before.
Okay, you're leading me down a path? Is
You could definitely play around with that more and help people know when they're leaking their privacy. I think it's a really cool tool to make. But this is post-mix consolidation. I think we all got what this meant.
Yeah, don't mix your mixed coins with your
Yeah.
non-mixed coins.
Right. I go over some implementations. It's only 3 because limited time, and not all of them are easily usable at the moment.
Or at all.
Yeah, whirlpool considerations. So I have some considerations that each implementation has made, and maybe some criticisms against each CoinJoin implementation. So I can't actually access the code, so I tried to reference the white paper that is still on GitHub. They do implement the equal amount outputs that was in the CoinJoin Bitcoin talk post. They have separate wallets for premix and postmix UTXOs. Postmix payment consolidation to avoid amount linkage. So I think they might have mentioned something about consolidation of the postmix thing. There's a warning, but they will let you consolidate postmix coins. They have some fee rate sanity checks against Bitcoin Core. Must be between estimate smart fee 1 and 1008, which is the number of blocks that you'd like it to get in by your transaction. Uniform change address types are, so anyone who does have change, again, this is from the white paper, and this actually was tweaked a little bit. But the idea was anyone who had change, the change would always be spent to a pay to witness public key hash change address. I wouldn't let people choose, because then you could dox yourself with the address type that you choose for the change. And as many supported target address types as possible in terms of who's getting paid. So the equal amount outputs could be whatever address, because you should be able to pay anyone you want, right?
The fee rate sanity check against Bitcoin, what do you mean checks against Bitcoin Core?
Yeah, so I had a presentation at Bitcoin Plus Plus conference. I was focused on privacy about, what was it, like wallet privacy. You leave a footprint on chain depending on which wallets you use, because wallets have different, where some wallets have different implementations for calculating the fee. And if your fee algorithm is too unique, someone can point you out and say, hey, you're using this wallet. And again, you lose some privacy that way.
So are they using Bitcoin Cores?
So in the white paper, they said they keep it within this range of Bitcoin Core, assuming that a lot of people in Bitcoin Core are going between these 2 targets. I don't think that's a reasonable assumption. I feel like even the people who use Bitcoin Core don't use estimate smart fee to choose their fee, and they use the default implementation, and a lot of people end up having the same fee rate. So yeah, again, this is the white paper, and they actually implemented things different. For example, change, instead of having change as part of their CoinJoin transactions, they break off change that they don't want in the CoinJoin in a transaction 0 before your UTXO actually enters the CoinJoin with everyone else. So there's no change in the CoinJoin transaction. The wallet makes sure to break it off.
So they're doing that thing that Eric was saying, like they're taking that bigger UTXO, they're removing all of the excess that's not going to be a part of the CoinJoin, and then just that new UTXO that's the right size, that's what goes into the CoinJoin.
Correct. And I think Whirlpool or Samurai had a doxic change wallet. Yeah, to separate all the change that you're breaking off before you're putting
Because
things.
they have a whole feature in there where you can like collect a bunch of toxic change and then include that in another mix.
Yeah. So yeah, doxic change. Yeah, you keep putting them in, so on and so forth. So some Whirlpool criticisms are that default Samurai wallet. The default Samurai wallet sent your XPub to a central server, and that is a huge vulnerability, because if that central server gets seized, then potentially law enforcement could take all the XPubs that were sent to the server and see all the addresses that were involved within the Whirlpool CoinJoins.
So we should be finding out in the next year or two how big of a problem this is for Samurai.
Yeah, there's some false assumptions of unique mix partners. So
To me, that doesn't seem as big a deal. Because, if you're going to play with Samurai, you know you're playing with, a special privacy tool, right? You're not going to use Samurai as your everyday, like, get the milk and cookies wallet, you know? Like,
Right.
You're sending money you want to mix to Samurai, and that's what you don't. Samurai is not Sparrow, you know. Samurai is not Blue Wallet, right? So
Well, we know that, Eric.
Yeah, but
so the XPub on the Samurai wallet is, it's not
Yeah.
gonna like leak your whole like life savings, right?
Unless you're an unsophisticated
Well,
basic
not only that,
user.
even aside from that, the point here is if you're sending your XPub to Samurai, then the whole blinded thing is worthless because they know the links from the inputs and outputs at that point. So if they know your XPub, like the whole Coinjoin is silly if all the participants within it are doxed with their XPub.
Like if there was just, let's say, 2 hops, right? Like you bought the Bitcoin on an exchange and you sent it to wallet A. Then from wallet A you sent it to Samurai because you didn't want it to be connected, right? Well, if Samurai has your XPub connecting this hop, and then the government has all the information from the exchange, like
But to
that's
send it from A to Samurai, you have to go create 12 words and like create an XPub at that point. It's only the money that you sent from A to Samurai that can be leaked.
Yeah,
No, I
but if A came from an exchange, if it came from an exchange, now it's like your whole,
I see. Yeah, you're one hop removed.
Yeah, they-
Even aside from that, it's just the fact that the coordinated server can link inputs and outputs, and it shouldn't have been able to be given that thing. If the coordinated server can link inputs and outputs, and someone confiscates that server, then the Coinjoin privacy is gone, regardless of exchange stuff. It's just the fact that you now know the inputs and the outputs of all of those, so you can link them together. And once someone spends that, you know that they were that person that started the mix, right?
Would you say that they should not have like released their server to like mainnet and just have it as like a
And they should have.
implementation example and like
A reference? Well, I think there's a lot of things they did wrong to get
There's a lot of
seized. there are Coinjoin implementations that still operate today that aren't seized. They put a huge target on their back with the whole solicitation of Russian oligarch tweet. So they made the block hot for themselves.
but they came out of the gate saying we're so much better than Wasabi because Wasabi does things.
Wasabi 1.0, and
They were wrong even in some of that.
yeah, and I wanted to go into Wasabi 2.0. So going back, I forgot to add this is Chaumian based. So theoretically, maybe you don't leak your privacy. You send to somebody new from a Coinjoin. I think Samurai would allow you to do that, and if you're not doing self mix, then you start saving some privacy. But most people mix their coins not to make a payment, but to have in the future for themselves that anonymized UTXO. Those are self mixes too, especially if the XPub is used to generate your output for a Coinjoin transaction, for example. That'd be very bad. But Wasabi 2.0 is also Chaumian based. Wasabi 1.0 wasn't. So this was a big thing for Wasabi. And
I'm pretty sure 1.0 was also Chaumian based, but different, right?
was it? I know a lot of different things about the Wasabi 1.0. I don't know. I don't think
I
it
think Wasabi
was
1.0
Chaumian.
was similar to Samurai. It's the same protocol except.
But Samurai also changed like a lot from this white
Yeah,
paper,
yeah.
and they planned Chaumian mix from the beginning. So just because I don't know, it has it now. Because I remember I read Wabi Sabi and I did not look at Wasabi 1.0, so I know some of the improvements, and they made the Chaumian factor big. So, but maybe it was in 1.0. I haven't read the code for that. I have looked at the code for Wasabi 2.0. They have unique uneven outputs with arbitrary amount splits. So this was a huge innovation that you don't have to have equal valued outputs. Instead, they just try and group different parties within a Coinjoin transaction as its own anonymity set. And if I put in a huge UTXO, they can split my UTXO into amounts that make more sense with the Wasabi wallet, so that the anonymity set could be variable sized and can come from multiple different people. So there's no change output. The UTXO gets broken down enough so that you don't even have to worry about any toxic or doxic change. Some criticisms is that they've refused certain UTXOs, bless you, from registering to Coinjoins. They had this tweet, 2022, and a lot of people criticized Wasabi 2.0 because of this. So join market, they have a traditional approach. Again, they have outputs that are equal valued.
And this is the only one left, right?
Wasabi's still up. Well, no, Wasabi's shutting down globally. Huh? Yeah, Wasabi, I don't think has globally shut down the service yet, but the company is closing down soon, and this isn't operated within the U.S. No, yeah, the Wasabi is going to stop being offered, and ZK Snacks are they? I think they were shutting down, right?
I think they took their server implementation down. I couldn't find it.
I mean, they said they were no longer going to be coordinating, and that starting on a certain date, which I think is in June, they're no longer going to offer service in the United
No, I think
States.
they're shutting down.
Yeah, they had another announcement that they were
Oh, I
shutting
haven't
down.
seen that. Wow.
Yeah.
They can't
What a
make
year.
money- They can't make money if they're not coordinated. Realistic.
Yeah, that's the main revenue stream for them.
Can you still run it on
It's open source.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
you can run it, and if someone has a copy, I know the coordinator was open source for a bit, I just don't know where it is, and I couldn't find it when I was looking for it.
Yeah,
So if someone still has a copy of that, you can run one.
yeah, on your own coordinator.
but if it's hard to find, then your anonymity set's probably not gonna be that big.
No, it's not going to be.
No, you gotta find some liquidity.
Yeah. Join Market has a decentralized approach. I don't believe they use any Chaumian. I don't think they have any Chaumian schemes. So Greg Maxwell, back in the 2013 post, he did imagine a way for a decentralized CoinJoin to happen using this Chaumian-based system, but it's kind of hard to achieve because it requires a lot of interactivity between the participants. But Join Market has a pretty traditional approach. It seemed the most traditional out of all of them. Equal valued outputs. It did have change outputs to a CoinJoin transaction, but the big innovation here is having a decentralized coordinator, where takers are offering up liquidity and makers are the ones looking to mix for the takers who are there. Some criticisms is that it wasn't traditionally user-friendly, but now we have a UI called Jam that makes it very easy to use. Otherwise, you'd be using Python scripts, which a lot of users have no idea how to run. And it contains change output on mixing transactions. And since time is almost up and we should transition to BitDev soon, I have a slide about takeaways. And my takeaway set was on-chain privacy does not change who you are and how you act. So if you have patterns in your behavior, all that will leak privacy over time, regardless of how many times you coin join. Habits have to be avoided, and even the avoidance of habits can dox you. So if you avoid doing things too much, then that'll make you part of an outlier set. Randomness, for example, going back to this whole peer-to-peer encryption between Bitcoin nodes, which maybe I'll do on another privacy session. But one of the problems with it is the randomness that it generates between connections is too perfect. So there's no other protocol that generates better random data, and it actually makes it stand out. So the whole thing about peer-to-peer encryption in Bitcoin is so no one knows that you're running Bitcoin. But now people will know because it's too solid of a protocol, and it stands out. So yeah, different CoinJoin implementations have different trade-offs, and which one you choose should probably depend on your behavior, how you plan to use your output UTXOs. So if you do have toxic change from a CoinJoin, if you know how to manage it, that's fine. Then use whatever implementations out there. If Join Market does it, it doesn't matter, because if you're using Python, you most likely know how to move your UTXOs in a way to keep them private. And there's a question to all of you, which is, can you think of any other heuristics you can use to try and break down people's privacy to let them know that they're not as private as they think? And how can we implement things that help ensure greater privacy on the blockchain? Because again, privacy on the blockchain isn't used by big players. The major players have enough money to buy into social systems, like banks, to launder money, in my opinion. and privacy on the blockchain is essential, fundamental really, to any transaction. You don't want anyone seeing your life savings just because you want to buy a lawnmower with Bitcoin or whatever else.
So I think one of the things is lowering your time preference on transactions, right? If you want your transaction to make it in right away, that gives like some timing attacks and things like that. So if you don't care as much and these transactions don't need to be confirmed right away, you can use some of these tools where you can load up a week's worth of transaction and it will only be the next week it'll start kind of trickling it out during random times. That's like a good one good way to think about it. Other ways to try to split up your UTXOs into amounts where maybe you can even just spend the whole thing, which kind of breaks heuristics in a way, because if you don't have change, most heuristics assume that that's a self-spend, and if a lot more of that happens and they're not self-spend, so that just kind of breaks the idea.
But that must be really hard because of the fees, right? Like, so you were saying
Pay
first,
our
so you
fee.
have to be,
Yeah.
but then it would have to be within that UTXO, right? Like within the size of the UTXO.
Yeah, so split your stuff up into a place where like, oh, when I do channel opens, when I do certain things, I can just spin the whole thing, not really care for change, and just have that as more of a normal thing in your Bitcoin spending. So that, so you can send just one shots, and maybe ask for change in a different way, right? Not necessarily if you're buying, if you're giving some money to someone because they're buying some food, just be like, oh, I'll give you some more, and then next time just remember that I gave you some more, something like that, right? So it breaks on-chain heuristics, which is.
I wonder if you could send your change to like a charity.
People do that.
You know,
Yeah.
like the
I wanted
Time
to
Chain Foundation.
have a small
So
discussion
Docs Exchange,
on here,
a lot of
but
the
I
things
could
that people
go.
recommended Docs Exchange for, so that you don't
I'll let him
combine
finish.
it. They say, since it's a small amount usually, don't combine it with the other stuff to make a bigger amount. Just send it to donation addresses. You don't have to dox yourself. Just send it out to any of your favorite Bitcoiners and developers.
Also, I'm gonna end the stream just so we can start getting ready for bit devs and
And
we
eat
can
some
continue the
pizza.
conversation afterwards. So, yeah, thanks everyone for coming. I'm gonna press.